Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
I think the biggest thing is, sometimes you come to camp and you're like, hey, I want to stay healthy. We want to get good. And, our games early in the year, they come down to missed tackles. They come down to special teams. So we want to consistently work on our tackling. We want to consistently work on the situations that win games. Special teams is a big point of emphasis, obviously, for us, because when it's been good to us, we've won, and when it hasn't, we've lost. There's going to be these huge moments, these huge games during the year. But to me, the reason why you come out here and grind day after day is not really for like the big games that everyone loves. It's, when you go on the road and you're playing in a stadium with maybe 40,000 people, or you come out and it's a really cold, windy day, or you're just not playing that great. Like the point of camp is to build the competitive stamina and the ability to handle adversity, or sometimes even when you're not necessarily on emotionally. What's the standard of play that you have? And so we want to be a killer instinct team that plays the same way every day. We have not been for a long time. And so really, if I had to pick one thing, it's just a consistent, methodical approach to the game of football.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. It's our annual preseason show. Mac?
What's up, y'all? How's it going? It's that time of year.
It is that time of year.
We are looking in now. We're in the home stretch.
We are emotionally consistent as a show. I mean, I'm basing off of what Coach Rule just said there.
I would agree. I feel emotionally consistent.
Do you know who else is emotionally consistent?
Tell me.
Our guest.
Oh, who is
tonight?
That?
Back for, I don't know, the 8th or 9th or 10th time at this point. Brett Ciancia, Pick 6 Previews, the number one most accurate in the nation by Stasson.com football prediction. Welcome to the show again, Brett.
That sounds pretty good.
Thanks for having me back on, Honke and Mac. Hope it's been a good offseason for you guys. And, it's the best time of year. Everyone's undefeated. Everybody's optimistic. I'm excited to break down this Nebraska season, break down the Big Ten race. And, our annual chat. This is one of my longest-running annual chats here. So excited to be back on with you guys.
I say this every year to you, Brett, and I mean it every time. I love seeing how you've grown from the first year that we've done this. But you're selected. You're a Heisman voter now. You're invited to be on the 12-person FWA All-American Team Selection Committee. You're a voter in other national awards such as the Bolitnikoff, the Outland, the Nagurski, and you're a weekly ballot on FWA Super 16 poll. This is so cool to see somebody just create this from scratch, from day one. This is all Brett Ciancia building up Pick 6 Previews. Do you pinch yourself some days? I mean, like that you've gotten this to where you are at now?
Yes and no. I mean, there's certain pinnacle moments where it's like, it is kind of surreal. Like this year, Scott Van Pelt on ESPN, he held up the magazine and was saying, "This is the best magazine. I love it. Got to have it every year." Like moments like that are just surreal. Or even like last September when I was over there in Lincoln, I got to meet you guys again, and Husk guys and Omaha Steaks tailgate, and just having random fans come up and introduce themselves and say they love my work. Like that is so cool. Probably the coolest part of this. But then it's also not as shocking because it's been such a long, slow grind. I mean, you guys were there from the beginning, back when I had 1,000 or 10,000 followers and just starting to put this company together, really. So just the years and years behind the scenes of hard work, now it's really the fun part. So just, thanks for being there from the beginning, and excited to keep growing it.
Well, that's awesome.
Super cool.
Yeah,
super cool.
Before we get into all the football talk, I want to give one little shout out here with Redcast Abby. She's going to be doing a volleyball show next week, Tuesday, August 12th, tentatively speaking, 8 p.m. That will be with Lincoln Arneal, and they'll do a volleyball preseason show there as well. So the Redcast, we started, Brett, simply as a football show and a little bit of men's basketball and baseball on the side. Now we've turned it into kind of a full circle Husker sports show, but
it's a full experience.
But man, when it's Mac and I, and when Brett's on, it's 100% football. So Redcasters, let's get to it. And we'll start here with the first part here is the Blue Bloods piece. And so I'm going through kind of chronologically through the magazine here, Brett. And we start off here, and you have a Blue Blood section. Talk a little bit about what you do in your Blue Bloods program. A little bit of a hint, Nebraska is still part of it, but tell a little bit to the viewers and listeners how you get to these numbers and how Nebraska ends up being still listed as a Blue Blood.
Yeah, well, it's one of those off-season debates that comes up every year. It seems like every January, February after the national title, when college football fans are still all charged up and there's nothing much to argue about, so they go back to the history of it. And blue blood is a term that you hear thrown around, and I notice it's one of those where everyone disagrees or argues about. So I just put it up to a simple poll. I listed out 20 different programs and just did a simple yes/no poll on Twitter. I know Twitter polls aren't the most scientific, but we drew in 175,000 votes, so it's somewhat decisive, I feel like. But what happened was, and what has happened since, is every single year it's the same 8 programs that are scoring into the above 70% here to be named a blue blood. It's the same 8 every time, and that stood true even last year again. It's Alabama, Ohio State, and Michigan, Notre Dame, Oklahoma and Texas, USC, and then Nebraska. And, the order may fluctuate a little bit here and there, some percentage shifts here and there, but there is always a massive gap between those 8 and the other 12 contenders. And that gap this year was Nebraska was 72% yes. Penn State was next in line at 42%. So a 30% chunk there, really dividing the 8. So long story short, it's one of those undefinable terms, blue blood. If you poll 175,000 people, you're probably going to get 175,000 different definitions. But with that many votes, it becomes clear who is and who isn't.
What do you think, Mac?
Well, I can't really argue it whatsoever. It's fascinating to me. As I was looking at it, I was trying to look at it in terms of who's got the best NIL amongst these teams. And really, as I go down, even the ones that don't quite make the that 70 percentile threshold, you still got Penn State, Georgia, Miami, LSU, those Tennessee, some big NIL programs. But it's like, it's good to see our name listed amongst these teams when going forward in college football, how much that impact, that blue blood status. But not only that, but the purse strings that comes with will make a difference going forward. That was my only thought on that.
Well, Brett, we talked about before we went on live here, just talked a little bit about some of the other places around the country and facilities. And Nebraska is we are tops of the game in facilities. And when I think of blue blood programs, those are the things. It's not just the wins on and off the field. We've won a lot of games over a number of years. Yes, the last 6, 7, 8 years have not been, our high point, but as a program, I think that really reflects on fandom, following. You've talked to us also about how many shows. This is the first of how many Husker shows that you're going to be doing. That the following, the media, everything. It's as passionate as anywhere here.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's probably the biggest just media network out there. A part of it is because I guess there's no pro sports in Nebraska, but a lot of it is really just the football legacy. Decades and generations of just successful winning football. It becomes a way of life. That's what I've gathered. I've been out there two times now, and I'll say that I got to experience it at its best, really. I was out last September for the Nebraska-Colorado game. Not only a primetime game, you got a bitter rival coming in. And then to see Tommy Hill intercept Shadur Sanders, take it down the sideline for a pick 6, that was the loudest I've heard a college football stadium. I've been to a bunch all over the map, every conference covered now at this point. And that moment there, and I think what it was looking back was probably about a decade's worth of nightmares and close losses and all of that being exercised right there. That was just a lifting of spirits. And then, of course, they won the game and out-physicaled Colorado. Long story short, with Nebraska, I saw how passionate this fan base is, how deep the media circuit is. Like you said, I'm doing Go Big Redcast tonight. I got Husk Guys tomorrow, Damon Benning, Gary Sharp. The list goes on and on. You talk to other programs, there's not even a single beat writer. It's like you can't get any information. But this whole the Nebraska media complex is awesome. So, and what that does, it reflects the appetite for it. You wouldn't have all these shows and these media networks and everything if there wasn't a passion for it. So that's why I love it there, is because Nebraska seems to have the same passion for college football that I do. And and that's coming off of a lot of losing seasons. So I can't even imagine once this thing is rolling again. But well, yeah, so that's the blue bloods. I think that blue blood itself has like a backwards looking definition. It's more historical than maybe the forward looking NIL discussion. But I think Nebraska will be safe in both categories.
Yeah. Well, let's move on here. And to the next part here, we're going to call it the national scene. And Brett, it starts here. You've got a recruiting 5-year average. So these are your national rankings. And similar to previous years, Nebraska, right here out of 68 teams that are all Power 4 teams. That's how you do the Pick 6 previews, is based off of all of the Power 4 schools. Nebraska out of 68, ranked number 22. That's a fairly consistent kind of over the course of the last 9 years that we've been talking to you. The next page is also fairly consistent, and it's your development. And this is what I love about Pick 6 previews. It doesn't stop with recruiting. Too many places just say, hey, this team recruited good or they recruited bad based off of finish. Brett has created this whole player development and win conversion piece. And guess where Nebraska hasn't done very well?
Not very well.
The win conversion, the player development.
Oh, shocked.
We haven't won a lot of games, and we're not getting a lot of guys drafted in the NFL. Both things that Coach Rule's talked about and need to fix. So, talk a little bit about that, Brett. It's that combination of, we haven't recruited as bad as I think some people say we have, and we certainly haven't developed or won the way that we should have with the players that we've recruited over the years.
Yeah, and coaching changes don't help. Transfers out, a player retention problem could be part of it. Factored into player development or things like, I know the prior regime, a couple of regimes ago, really went away from the weight room and all the Husker power stuff. So these metrics, they're not just 1 year, they're over a span of years. So I won't even blame Matt Rule for any of these right now. This is still a past looking thing. This is still your Riley and Frost eras. So this should be improving. I mean, it's dead last in player development, second worst win conversion. But yeah, so what it does is it compares your recruiting ranking over a certain years compared to the actual output, whether it be on the field with wins or on NFL draft day. I am shocked though, even through the losing seasons, Nebraska has really been absent on the NFL draft scene. And that's something that's a little bit new. Even when I was just starting out Pick 6 previews, they were more prevalent there on draft day. So we'll see if that continues. Big picture, when you hire a guy like Matt Rule, I think that he is your player development guy. I mean, that's just what he has done. Player development, program development. You saw that at Temple, at Baylor. So, every coach has his strengths and weaknesses or areas of expertise. When you hire Rule, that's like you're going all in on the player development card. And I think at a place like Nebraska, you need that to be your A+ metric. I mean, that's got to be your thing. You got to be taking in some 3 stars, 4 stars, and developing them into schemes that work and turning them into pros. Because maybe you don't have the location luxury of some other schools or maybe recent wins, that kind of thing. So the player development has to be big here. I think it is. It's getting there.
Yeah, well, that's that 360 piece about even goes back to Blue Bloods and the support of the program. The facilities that we have, when you talk about player development, that there's no better weight room facility in the country. There's no better recovery facilities. There's no better research on food and training than what's going on at the University of Nebraska right now. That's got to be the secret sauce. That always has been for Nebraska, whether it was back in the 70s and 80s being, early on in the weightlifting and the nutrition piece, whatever it was, we were going to find every conceivable advantage that we could create. And right now, you will find no better football facility in the country than what Nebraska has. And Rule, that's specific to what he wanted. He wanted the finest grass fields that look like Augusta to golf on. He wanted those. He wants that, he wants to have that from a development standpoint, from a recovery standpoint. And I truly believe I'm right there with you, Brett, that these numbers are reflective of where we've been, but I don't think they're reflective of where we're going to go.
Yeah. When you look at it too, it's any Husker fan will kind of could nod their head to that. Nobody's going to be surprised by this. We've had a lot of 4-star, high-level 4-star recruits that we've won some recruiting battles for some guys, and they just never seem to pan out very well, at least within the last, 10, 15 years or so. So, and that has been really frustrating, especially when you go up against the Iowas of the world all the time and they're beating you by 1 score. But it's like, but they also get guys drafted. They also get guys in the pros, and that's just something we have been lacking on doing. And it'll probably take a few years because what's this go back to like 2018? This says so. We'll have to.
So the recruiting rank is over like 6 and 8 years, and even the wins and draft. But yeah, it's still a rolling average type deal. So rules not even impacted here yet. I think you'll know maybe next year's copy of the magazine and beyond. But this is a more of a testament to the Riley and Frost. There's the collapses that happen there.
It'll be interesting though to see the correlation too, though, if that goes up, in a positive way as our wins go up, just kind of proves the the formula. You know what I mean?
Well, Brett, this might be an area where we've started to see a little bit of an immediate turnaround. It's in your game grader. And so I'll give these numbers, but then maybe give a little bit of explanation what game grader is and maybe why you're seeing the difference in numbers. Over the 5-year average of game grader, amongst the 68 Power 4 teams, Nebraska is number 48. But when you go to 2024, last year's results, we were 31. So that seemed to buck the trend a little bit. It seemed like that went, that's 17 spots higher for 2024. Tell us a little bit about game grader. Tell us what that increase or that, going from 48 to 31 means.
Yeah, well, I'm a numbers guy in my background, and I tried to apply that to predicting seasons, predicting games, evaluating team strength. And when you're covering all 68 Power 4 teams going across divisions, across conferences, I needed a way numerically to really compare these teams. Like how's Nebraska compared to Duke or something, where you would never play them or play common opponents, but just a metric to go back to. And so what it is, it's called game grader. It's my number one formula among many, but the most prominent, and it takes everything about a game into consideration, margin of victory being the biggest, but yardage, yards per play, those margins, turnovers, explosive plays, negative plays created by the defense. It's a ton of stuff pumped in, but the key thing is it's also scaled to the opponent's strength, because beating UTEP by 40 points is a lot different than beating Ohio State by 40 points. So I like to call it opponent adjusted game grader. And, over the course of a season, over the course of 10 seasons, you can really get a feel for how a program is performing. And to your question there, Nebraska, over the last 5-year span, all the way down at 48th out of Power 4, out of 68 in Power 4. Last year, up to 31st, their best finish since 2016. And wow. I guess just, think about this for a second. Nebraska had one of the losingest programs over that time frame we're talking about, but to still be, quote, up at 48th out of 68 shows you how close they were, because this doesn't really just look at the win-loss record. It goes beyond that. And this will not be, it's not good news for Nebraska fans. They had to live through all these close losses, but it shows you how close they were. They weren't getting blown out all these years. They've been close and excruciatingly, one-score losses all the way. So 48th, you'd expect about a 500 team, and they were well below 500 over the Frost era. So I don't know. Yeah. So better than the record showed. And you can only say that for so long. You want to see it finally cash in. Yeah. We started to see it last year by getting back to bowl season, getting that winning record, beating Wisconsin, beating Colorado, snapping a lot of trends. So hopefully that's just the start of more trends to be snapped this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no kidding there. That's the greatest. They don't call us the greatest 3-9 team of all time for nothing, but you don't want to be that either.
National champions. Yeah, let's face it. We do well there.
Yeah,
this is our best time of year.
Well, you'll be on with Husk guys tomorrow. That's awesome, and they are the all-season champs as well. And that's who we were hanging out with last year at the Colorado game there, Brett. It was great to see you there. It was great to see you a couple years ago at the Oklahoma game as well. We got there on the field the Friday before and got to see you. You said that was a great environment too, except for everything after the second quarter.
That was a great environment for a couple drives for sure.
Yeah.
But Colorado had a little more juice.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I made it back, because when I left that Oklahoma game, I knew to myself, I have to return. I can't let that be the lasting memory of this place. I know it has a higher ceiling. So seeing it against Colorado, that was awesome. One of the best environments I've ever been. Game day atmosphere, they seemed like they really upgraded even in those couple years difference. I mean, maybe because it was a night game, but drone show, all the fireworks stuff, really just fan engagement was up. Really electric crowd. So, I mean, hats off to Nebraska and their whole team, their admin, everybody pulling that off.
Hey, Brett, I was just thinking about this with the onset of the transfer portal in particular, how difficult has that made, your job as a prognosticator and actually as an editor of a magazine over these last, few years? I mean, I can't imagine how quickly that stuff changes. And then with the addition of, say a top level quarterback to a team, what that changes in terms of expectations. So like, have you had to learn to be way more fluid with these things as they've come along?
Yeah, the transfer portal's explosion has really made this a harder process, probably tenfold. It's so much harder to do now. I mean, so I launched in 2012, and back then it was really simple. I mean, you had your returning starters. You saw who was going to go to the NFL early or not, and then you had the recruits coming in. That was pretty much it. And you really got to know the rosters. They were easier to predict trends based off that. But then the last 4 years, just the rosters are completely scattered. And these aren't just one or two per team or some backups you never heard of. These are key parts of teams, starting quarterbacks, all conference linemen, just essential pieces of a team. And then it's multiplied with a coaching change. I mean, you're basically just starting over an entire program now. I mean, look at Purdue. I think they have 70 new players this year, and that's off an 85.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Colorado did it a couple years ago with Dion, and UNC just went through another wave with Bill Belichick. I mean, they probably have 55, 60 new players. So, so from both of your parts of that question, the prognosticating, trying to predict how a team will look, it's a lot harder. It takes a lot more time, but I think that might be how I can provide some value to the reader is I am going through every single name, every single, where the guy come from, how was he at the last school, why did he transfer, how's he going to contend in this new room. So it's just it takes a lot of extra time, but I do try and put it back into readable terms. Like if I'm researching through and I find a guy that's not really going to make an impact, it doesn't really get much space in the book. But
sure,
I'd really try and find what's important and factor that into the write up. So also had to put in an all transfer team, which sounds funny, but you got your all America, your all Big Ten. Now you got an all transfer team.
Oh,
why not? Guys going around, but so that's on the prognosticating. Sorry. On the editor side, that's a nightmare too, because this thing goes up until the buzzer. It's like mid-May, early June, you still have guys transferring. And there's been times I've had to delete the entire page and start over fresh.
Oh,
Colorado comes to mind. I wrote my first draft in April and then put that on the back burner. When I came back to their conference, like half the team was gone. So I had to delete that whole thing and start over. But it's kind of a catch-22 because you want to get your magazine done early and out and selling and making the rounds in June. But it's also you want to make it accurate and have it be complete and up to date. So I always shoot for that mid-July. It's a little bit later than the others, but it's really the most up to date you'll find. Case in point is the day before I published, Jake Retzlaff, the BYU quarterback, was thrown out of BYU and transferred out, and that really shifted my expectation there. And was able to get that edit in there and move them down. They're barely on the top 40 board now. So stuff like that is crucial for me.
Yeah, there's a domino effect to any change like that. And you've got to be on top of it.
Maybe you could start offering patches. You know what I mean? Like you get it out in mid-June and then, like
2.0, 3.0.
Yeah, right. I'll just send a little patch out here, roster update, however they do it on EA Sports.
Well, and for Redcasters, you can buy 1.0 at pick6previews.com. Anything else with what do they need to know to purchase it, Brett?
Yeah, thanks. Well, it's only available at pick6previews.com, and on there you have the option for the digital copy, which is a PDF emailed over immediately, or the hard copy magazine, and that ships out a day or two from purchase. And when you buy the hard copy, you also get the digital right away too. So for those 2 days where it's in USPS shipping, you'll have access right away to the book.
Oh, that's cool.
And then we do have the in-season package this year called Pick 6 Plus, where it's all the information, stats and info, betting trends that you like, updated every Tuesday morning. So that's coming new this fall too.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, let's move on to the third section here that we're going to talk about, and that's the college football playoff and kind of the Power Four overview. We'll stick to the three other conferences other than the Big Ten for this part. So let's start with the playoff here, Brett, and I'll let you break all the news here. But who do you have as your top four, and tell us how you got to this playoff here?
Yeah, well, a wide open season again. You want to work backwards and pick your four conference winners because those are your automatic bids. And then from there, you can find your at-larges and which conference you think will get more bids in. So for the conference champs, I went Penn State from the Big Ten, Clemson from the ACC, Texas to win the SEC, and Arizona State to win a wide open Big 12. I'll start there with the Big 12. I think it's the most wide open conference I've ever covered. And this is now 14 years in. It's so wide open. At media days, they polled their coaches and they had them pick a winner for the conference. They settled on Kansas State and Iowa State, but neither of those made my top five. So I had them 6th and 7th. Coaches had them 1 and 2. Shows you how open this is. And there's head coaches and coordinators I talked to in that conference where I talk about some opponents, some scouting, and try and ask them who they think the top dog is. And they give me like 9 names. It's so wide open. But I went with Arizona State, the defending champs, bringing back about 20 starters. They do lose Cam Scatterbo at running back, but really a veteran team that's already been there. they had the advanced stats profile to back it up. So I think it's a legit team. From the Big Ten, I know we'll do a deeper dive there, so I'll keep it short. It's just Penn State, and I also have Ohio State and Oregon making the bracket as at-large teams. The SEC, I have 4 teams getting in. I have Texas beating Alabama in Atlanta, Bama also getting an at-large. Then I've got Georgia with an at-large, and LSU getting the final spot in the bracket. In the ACC, I have Clemson over Miami, and I do think that both teams will make the playoffs. So that rounds it out. Of course, you get your non-AQ champ of Boise. I went with Boise last year. I know the odds-on favorite last year was Liberty, but went against the grain with Boise. They proved me right. I'm going to stick with them this year, try and make it 2 in a row. And I do think that 12th spot, Notre Dame, I think is still a playoff team. I think they'll go either 11-1 or 10-2. In either case, I think barring blowouts, I think they're in there. So that's your 12. 4 from the SEC, 3 Big Ten, 2 ACC, plus Notre Dame, a Big 12, and a non-AQ.
I was going to say it's a little flipped from a year ago with the SEC and the Big Ten, at least. The Big Ten only having 3 and the SEC having 4 this time. But 2 of your top 3 seeds are Big Ten schools, Penn State and Ohio State, the only conference to have 2 of the top 4.
Yeah. There's still a serious strength at the top of the Big Ten. And, I mean, hey, it's the 2 past national champions. I think you have 3 great candidates again this year. In fact, if you want to put a little futures bet out here, Oregon's my national title pick for 2026. That was my little one-liner I had in the book. I think next year, Oregon is going to be tremendous. They could even break through a year early this year, but the amount of talent that is stockpiled there is incredible. If you do it on a per-player average, they were number 1 high school recruiting and number 1 transfer this cycle. So it might not click right away in 2025. It might be 2026. I do say this, though, with Oregon is that it's not the BCS anymore. They can afford to go 10-2 and then get really hot and grow up in January as a then veteran team. So yeah, anyways, I got Penn State and Ohio State in my top 3. Penn State is the champ. You'll notice here, though, this year in the bracket that it's not the 4 conference winners that are automatically getting the bye. Now they are going to reseed and just do 1 through 4. So I do have it where Ohio State and Penn State both have byes in the bracket. I think that they're going to have 2 of the best 4 resumes come December 10th or whatever that is. So little quirk there, but that's where I've got it with the Big Ten. Really strong at the top. I think the SEC is probably better in the intermediate, like the middle tier of their conference this year. Got way more top 25 teams from the SEC, but at the top, the Big Ten can compete.
Yeah, well, and that's, we'll get to Nebraska at the end here, but that is where Nebraska, you get some of the offseason hype. Nebraska needs to be able to help fill in that intermediate, point. Everyone's talked about the Big Ten being top heavy over the last few years. But who's going to fill in? Who's going to be those number 4, 5, 6, 7 teams? That's where Nebraska, it's got to be able to find its space. Sure. And to Brett's point there, these aren't the days where you have to go 11-1 and 12-0 to make it. You get 10-2. You have the right kind of season, the right kind of schedule, and teams are going to get in there. There's going to be a 9-3 team that makes it at some point too. It's just the inevitability of it. Brad, I know you were big early on, a big opponent of growing the playoff. I don't know if you changed your mind one way or the other on it, but how are you feeling right now as we've gone to 12, as there continues to be talk of 14 and 16 and so on? What is your take right now on just where we're at with the playoff?
Well, yeah, that's one issue, is the already demanding more expansion. I think at least if we're at 12, let's let it breathe a little bit. Let's go through some cycles of this. Let's really just try and find what works, what doesn't. I think the immediate push to go to 14 and 16 makes it even more transparent, if it wasn't already obvious, that it's just a TV deal now. It's just for marketing and for TV views. And, because people talk about championship access or whatever, and you already had that in the 4-teamer, or really if you had an 8, I think 8 would have been okay, maybe. Championship access, you have all these teams playing each other in November. That's when you determine who's a national champion contender or not. And they say, oh, we want this to be settled on the field. Well, I think you already had that in October, November, still in the old system. So we'll all disagree on that. I loved it when it was 4 teams. I could maybe get to 6 or 8. I think 12's too many. I liked the importance of the October, November games in college football. I think that's what made it stand out to me from other sports, really any other sport, because the regular seasons of the pro sports don't matter as much. And even college basketball, you go lose 12 games, you still make it to March Madness. So I really liked that there was all stakes on the line every Saturday. You could maybe drop a game, but you couldn't drop 2 or 3. And I think it really settled into everyone's minds with the Ohio State-Michigan game. I think this really changed the shift of everyone's perception of college football, because you had there an all-time upset, probably one of the biggest in college football history. It was a 21-point spread. It was the biggest upset within arguably the biggest rivalry in college football history, Ohio State-Michigan. And that would have been the knockout punch of knockout punches, And instead, they still make a bracket. They're on the same championship access as Oregon, who went 13-0 and already beat them. And then they, of course, they round into form. They win 4 impressive games, but I don't think, the way that we determine a national champion has shifted forever. So
it's just,
take with that what you'd like, good or bad, but it has certainly changed.
A week ago, I was at the Horseshoe Mac for work. We had a conference out there in Ohio State. Beautiful place, great people out there. I mean, they lose to Michigan one day and a month, and they want their coach gone. There are people calling for heads, and a month and a half later, they're national champs. I mean, at the very least, what I would say, the peaks and valleys of emotions that one fan base felt within, just a very short period of time. It's hard to keep up with right now because these changes are so fast. And to be honest with you, Brett, I didn't even realize the changes with the playoff this year. I didn't know if they actually went through with the top 4 not reordering. I hadn't been paying that close of attention, and it's that hard to keep up with stuff.
Geez,
I like what you said about
so
like give it a cycle or two to even see how we respond, because I mean the print wasn't even dry on the champion last year, and they were already talking about going to 14 teams, and it's just hard to keep up with it. So
I agree. Let's slow it down. I mean, I saw Eli Drinkwitz over there at SEC Media Days. He was calling for a 30-team playoff or something. I don't know. It just sounds like a guy that wants to find enough spots to make himself get a bid every year. Wouldn't that cheapen the value of it, though? I mean, if you have half of Power 4 making a playoff, can you really put up a banner saying you were a playoff team? Does that just become the new bowl team?
It's what it sounds
and then people were saying, hey, well, March Madness has 68. Well, they don't hang banners for making the 64-team March Madness. It's if you make a Final Four. That's the thing. So I don't know. It just seems
now at Nebraska, we might hang a banner for the March Madness, but that's because we haven't won one yet. But that's a different sport, and we are
program specific.
Before we leave Big 12 here, one question I wrote down here. So you have number 1 Arizona State, you have Texas Tech, Baylor, Utah, TCU. That's the top 5. Is there a school that you think, like within the Big 12, that maybe can differentiate itself from like an NIL perspective from the other schools? Because that's not the big money conference of the Big 10 and the SEC. Is there someone in the Big 12 that could come out of nowhere because of things like NIL?
Yep. And I think we're starting to see it a little bit this cycle, and it could be a generational type moment for Texas Tech. And what they did is they rallied a lot of funds out there, all their big oil money, all their big boosters. And they went out and signed the number 2 transfer class in America. And this
no kidding.
You never see that from Texas Tech. They're usually in the 40s or 50s in recruiting. They go and sign number 2. And to put in perspective, because this conference doesn't have as much recruiting power as the Big 10 or SEC, but Texas Tech signed 12 blue chip transfers this cycle. That's more than the entire rest of the Big 12 combined. Wow. So they have a serious influx of talent coming in. It could be the biggest science experiment of 2025. I want to see how this works. Talking to opposing coaches, they are blown away by the sheer amount of talent coming in, but also skeptical and wondering how well can that gel so quickly. A lot of new personalities coming in. These are all conference players, future pro prospects. You got to really get them on the same page quickly. So
is that still Joey McGuire down there?
Yeah.
Texas Tech?
Yeah. And, and we saw it a little bit in some of the other sports too. In softball, they brought in like the top pitcher, spent like apparently $1 million on a pitcher. And I mean, so if you're doing that in softball, I can only imagine what they're putting together.
I mean,
for
come on,
for the money sport. Yeah. Holy smokes.
So that's the pick for that. And I've got them playing in the Big 12 title game against Arizona State. I think it's going to be a special year. That's right now the only road trip I have on the books right now is I'm heading down to Lubbock for a game. I got to see this experiment happen in real life. So excited for that. I'd also look at TCU as a potential rising team in the next couple of years. I mean, once you take Texas and Oklahoma out of this Big 12 footprint and this recruiting pool, it's actually Tech and TCU are the top recruiters now in the 5-year average. So looking off location and funding, I think you're going to see 2 programs emerging there in Texas Tech and TCU.
What about Oklahoma State? Do they have any? Is there NIL funding? Keep them competitive or not?
I think it's been lacking. I don't know. Maybe some of the boosters, I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not that familiar, but from afar, I would guess that maybe they're not sure about Gundy's future, how long he's going to stay there. Will he adapt to the game? It just seems like they have really lagged behind in recruiting and transfers. And there's two ways that could happen. One being the coach and his staff, or the other way, the backside is there's not as much funding. They might be withholding some of their funding as kind of a testament to the coach. So I can't answer that. There's two different ways it could go. But I was shocked if you look at their recruiting and transfer profile, how low they are, because for the majority of the Pick Six Previews era, since 2012, they've been a solid top 25 team. They're always in the mix, always like in the top 4 of that conference. But they have really fallen off, and I'm not sure exactly
seems like
why.
Such a prime time for them to make a move too, with Texas and Oklahoma gone, and then I'm surprised. I've always kind of liked Gundy. Maybe more as from afar. Yeah. I mean, he's a character and everything. And I'm a fan of long-term coaches at a program. That's the old-fashioned in me. But I like when a guy's been at a program for a while. So, but I'd hate to see, and I know it's probably pretty common. I know that all the changes in college football recently, I'm sure that rubs a lot of these old-time coaches the wrong way. It would
sure it does. As we look at the playoff, you said that there were 3 ACC teams that made it. Clemson, Miami, and then Notre Dame as a quasi-ACC team. Let's move over to that conference. You have Clemson number 1, Miami number 2, Louisville number 3, and a tie for 3rd with Georgia Tech and Florida State. So Florida State, that's quite the reversal from what they did a year ago. Tell us a little bit about the ACC, Brett.
Yeah, the ACC to me is really a 2-team race with Clemson and Miami, and I like them for different reasons. I think first with Clemson, you've got a defending champion. They bring back something like 20 starters. It's pretty much the whole team back. Cade Klubnik, their quarterback, could be the best in the country. Really good receiver room, and then their defense is just packed with all conference guys. So I think they're going to get even stronger here. It's a veteran Dabo team, and if you look at the NFL mock draft pick column in the book, they're number 2 in that. So this is kind of a who's who of next year's draft. So I like what I have there. We know what we have with Clemson. Miami's a bit more of a wild card. I really like their recruiting and transfer ranks. They're top 10 in both. And in this conference, that stands head and shoulders against the rest of the field here. So they're the most talented on paper. I think they made a good move on defense to change coordinators, but they are also adding Carson Beck, who has been hot and cold over his career at quarterback. So you lose a Heisman candidate and number 1 pick Cam Ward, and you replace with Carson Beck. That's a question. So, but still, that's my top 2, and really a large gap after that. It really falls off. In fact, those are the only 2 ranked ACC teams I've got in the top 25. I see a race for 3rd between Georgia Tech and Louisville and Florida State for different reasons. Florida State, I think they did pretty well from the transfer portal. Brought in 2 great coordinators. You guys are familiar with one of them being Tony White. I love him as a coordinator. Liked him at Cuse, loved him at Nebraska, and I think he'll help fix Florida State. And then they got Gus Malzahn to come over, actually demoted from head coach of UCF to take on some X's and O's as the OC. So look at them to bounce back from 2-10 to more of an 8-4, 7-5 type team. But yeah, really a 2-team race here with Clemson and Miami.
Boomer, you're on the back end here. Can you give us, you said there's a question here that for Brett from Ron Barker. What determines which game you will attend each season and where in 2025? I know you said that Texas Tech was one of them.
Yeah, well, good to hear from Husker Ron. In fact, we bumped into each other a couple of times at tailgates, so I might reframe this question as where is Ron going to attend, because that seems to be where I follow him. So it depends on where he's going. It feels like I have to follow, but no, I've got to meet him a couple of times. Great guy. But where I go each year, it's wide open. I really open up the map. I like to see new places. I like to see top-notch teams. I also like to hit somewhere where there's like a special moment happening. That's why I really tried to get to that, and I did get to the Nebraska-Oklahoma a couple years ago. That was a rivalry when I was really starting to get into college football. That was still like peak college football to me. So I wanted to see that live once. But with this Texas Tech season, it's kind of a one-year window. I want to see it. Same with Penn State this year. It looks like there could be their best shot for a national title in my lifetime. So I want to go up and see that whiteout game against Oregon in late September. And also just top matchups. Like last year, I went down to Bama, Georgia in late September, and that was one heck of a game. What we thought would be an SEC title preview. Of course, Alabama came up short. But, yeah, I guess to answer your question, I just want to see places that love college football. I want to see some unique venues. Maybe not necessarily the biggest stadiums, but just the ones that really care the most and might have something special going on.
Well, you mentioned the SEC there. That transitions us into the final P4 conference that we'll talk about before the Big Ten here, and that's the SEC. You have Texas number 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3, LSU 4, Texas A&M 5. Brett, tell us a little bit about how you got to these numbers with the SEC.
Yeah, this conference is packed, absolutely packed with talent. I mean, you see it on signing day every year. You see it in the transfer portal, where it seems like all arrows lead up to the SEC. They're always it's trending one way. It's all up to them. And then you see it on NFL draft day 4 years later, every cycle. It's the most draft picks. So they have a lot of talented teams here. In fact, you'll see on the top 25 board, they got 10 teams in there for me. And that doesn't even include South Carolina or Missouri, who are two teams that people are high on to be potential top 25 teams. So I think it's a really crowded conference, some of the best teams. I know the Big Ten can challenge at the top, but I think if you're looking at depth, this is the best conference right now. Texas, they're 5 stars everywhere. I mean, they're the number 1 recruiting class last year, 5 straight top 5 classes. That's just the recipe for, a playoff bid. Bama, what stood out to me about them was, last year they had to replace Nick Saban. It was a transitional year, but now they got everybody that could have gone pro back in Tuscaloosa. Normally you watch an NFL draft, you see 10, 12, 13 Bama players picked. This year, 5, and they're all back in Tuscaloosa. And they're number 1 for the 2026 mock draft. So they just delayed it a year, and they're back again for this year. So really talented team. I got them playing Texas. Most people have Georgia. I still think they're a playoff team, but I don't see them winning the conference or contending there in Atlanta for the SEC title. Still strong enough to be a playoff at large. They still have that benefit of the doubt with a roster like that. And then the final spot in the bracket, really to me, it was LSU. You could argue A&M. I've also got Florida and Oklahoma ranked highly, although they face really tough schedules. Oklahoma drawing 8 top 25 teams. It's just crazy. So while they're talented teams, I don't see a playoff path. So I landed with LSU, and really they're all in on this year. If Brian Kelly can't do it here, then it's not going to work out because they've had all the funding in the world. They signed the most expensive coordinator in college football. They just signed the number 1 transfer haul, and you know how expensive transfers are. So they're all in, and I think it's time they produce. I think they will. I think they're going to make a big step forward here. That's the 4.
All right. Well, that's the SEC, folks. And I think for the Husker fans that have been sticking around, this is the part they really want to get to now. Let's talk about Big Ten football, and let's get into the Huskers. So let's start with the Big Ten preview here. And we go through the top 5. We have Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, 1, 2, 3. Then a tie at 4th with Michigan and USC. We're still on the left column here, and we see Indiana, the team that went from last to essentially almost first last year. So remember that, fans, that preseason rankings don't mean everything. There are schools that buck the trends. And right behind number 6, Indiana, number 7, Nebraska.
Oh,
I guess I should ask this, Brett. How did you have Indiana last year? Were you one of those that saw kind of what was going to happen, or did you have them on the bottom end as well? Where did you have them?
No, I missed on Indiana along with pretty much everybody else.
Sure,
and,
absolutely.
I had them down at 17th out of 18. I think I actually had a tie, Indiana and Purdue, which could not have been further from the truth looking at those two teams. I think they beat them 66-0, and Purdue was the worst team in America. So, yeah, everybody missed on Indiana. Everybody missed on Arizona State last year. BYU was a miss by everybody. There were a lot of roulette chips out there that hit, and you just can't forecast for something like that. So
sure.
What you do is you tip your cap to the coaching staff, and then you also try and think back of what worked there. And I think the question with Indiana last time around was they brought in, 30 transfers, pretty much imported the whole James Madison roster with Kurt Signetti. And I, along with everyone else, we didn't think it would translate right away. We didn't think that all these Sun Belt guys would come in and run the Big Ten, and they did just that. So excellent coaching, really crisp performance. I mean, they never beat themselves. They were just clean and did everything right, and they blew out a lot of teams. So
they blew us out.
Yeah, and I mean they looked dominant a lot at times. So and statistically, it wasn't a fluke. I mean, they were up there top 6, I think, in my game grader last year. So they did really well. We'll see if Lightning can strike twice. I don't think they make a return to the playoff, but I don't think they're going to really fall off either.
No lack of confidence from the head coach, though.
No, and I I bite my tongue sometimes with the SEC. And I love that Signetti did not bite his tongue with the SEC when it came to scheduling and everything at the Big Ten Media Days. I appreciate that. But everyone's doing what's best for their program.
You know, like when they talk about the mid levels coming up in the Big Ten to compete with the SEC, no one talks about teams like Indiana. But then Indiana just kind of did just that.
Well,
you know, if you can get some of these guys to come up.
Well, that's exactly where Nebraska is. Right behind us, you have a tie at 8th with Washington and Illinois. Actually, Brett, probably Illinois is one of those teams that seems to be a little more favorable right now. More people are looking at them in that 5th or 6th spot. So you have them, relatively low down there, tied for 8th. What are you seeing with the Illini right now?
Yeah, every year there's a couple of these teams that I pretty much disagree with the whole crowd on. And Illinois is the team this year. You just saw them check in at 12th in the country in the coaches poll today, and pretty popular pick to be a playoff dark horse, 10 wins discussion. I don't see any of that happening. Now, here's the thing. Last year, excellent coaching job. My hat's off to Brett Bielema. He grinded out 10 wins with that roster. A lot of one-score games, a lot of overtime wins, final plays of the game wins. So, that's great. But if you're looking forward to the next year, I don't see that replicating. I don't see them getting back to that stage. What I like to look at is my game grader. I keep bringing it up, but it is one part of the formula here. And they were 35th in the country last year out of Power 4. That's below average in Power 4. So even
behind us, then.
Yeah, even with the 10-win season, I mean, when you adjust for all my stuff I look at, it really wasn't a top 10 team, nowhere close. They were down at 35th, 9th in the Big Ten last year. So even though they returned most of the roster, I think that they already hit their peak with that record. I don't see that record being duplicated again. So I've got a big drop-off in the win column. I see them as an average team. I mean, that's what the numbers saw, and that's what I think they'll remain this year. So that's my team. I disagree with everybody on. We'll see. We'll talk again in December and see what happened. But I'm selling Illinois stock big time.
Well, that's the left column. The right column, the bottom 9 in the Big Ten, starts with Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, some old Big Ten West foes, Michigan State, UCLA, Rutgers, Northwestern, Maryland, and then Purdue seems to be the safe bet that everyone's putting down there at 18. Now, Iowa at number 10, I think that could raise some eyebrows for some people too, because typically speaking, they've been in that top 5, top 6 category. Also, I've seen their name get bandied about a little bit with some, long shot national, playoff contention. So, the Hawkeyes at number 10, what do you see in there?
Yeah, well, I thought with Iowa last year, I was really high on them, actually. And I was on the Bear Bets show with Chris Felica, and this was my best bet of the year. I gave him over 7.5 wins with Iowa. And on the show, we were joking around. I was saying 7.5, I think they get to 9, maybe even 10. And I thought that, why I thought that was, it was veteran. It was all their guys were back on defense. Their Swarm collective really helped keep everybody in Iowa City. And I thought that, when Iowa gets old like that, that's when they really are at their best, especially defensively. Thought the offensive coordinator would at least get a little bit of juice on the offense, and it did, but the defense didn't live up to standards. So they disappointed last year. They still hit that over-under, but there was no room to wiggle there. It took a miracle comeback against Nebraska to get there. More like a ridiculous finish if you watch that game. And I know you guys saw that, but yeah, so looking forward to this year, they lose a lot of that veteran defense that I liked last year. So they're kind of restarting there at some spots. I do like what they did at quarterback. Bringing in Gronowski from FCS, a former FCS Heisman, I think they call it, or whatever the name they have for that, the Walter Camp. And, he put up a ton of yards, ton of stats, a ton of wins over his long career. And the comp that I was given by Scott Docterman, the great Iowa writer, he was comparing him to Trace McSorley, the guy from Penn State about 10 years back. So that's a great comp if you're an Iowa fan. So I think he gives you a puncher's chance in a lot of games. I think you'll see an improved offense, but I do see the defense taking a step back. It's just they're transitioning a lot of personnel there.
Yeah, they've been so good on defense and so good on special teams for so long and had to win games that way that stresses your team. Well, you need a little bit of help from the offense. And I agree, the quarterback that they brought in, I've been saying this a little bit this offseason, is that he's the first Iowa QB I've seen in a while that can bring his legs into the game a little bit. And McSorley is a great comp. For Husker fans, the comp I kind of had was Joe Gantz, except just bigger. He's got a little more size to him, and he can beat you with his legs on some runs. And so that could be a scary thing. If Iowa just gets an ounce of offense, imagine what that does. Even if their defense and special teams drop a little bit, you get just a little bit of point scoring out of them. I think they had some crazy stat where if they've scored more than 21 points or more than 31 points, whatever it was. If they hit a certain number, I mean, it was like they were basically undefeated, and it's just they haven't been able to hit that number very much. So, anyways,
I will throw this in real quick with Iowa is they lost the schedule lottery this year, and last year why I was so high on them win total wise was because of the schedule draw. They drew a lot of bottom tier teams. This time they draw 5 of the top 7 in the conference. That's a lot tougher road to get through compared to last year where they missed almost everybody up top. So that shifts for them. That shifts for Wisconsin. A really brutal schedule draw.
I was going to say the Badgers, man. Their schedule's nuts.
So I think those two, yeah.
What do you make of Wisconsin's most recent moves? Like, I've talked to Honke about this before, but when they fired Christ and they went with Fickle and they kind of with this big upheaval and change in philosophy and everything like that, it just rang all the bells for me back when we got rid of Solich and we hired Callahan and we thought we needed to do the newest, shiniest thing possible, but we kind of forgot who we were. Heard of recruiting, heard everything, heard for a long time. I see some similarities, some parallels to that with Wisconsin. And, this is a shitty time to do that if you're going to make a move in college football. You know what I mean? Because I feel like this is the time where a program really needs to establish itself in a couple of ways. One of those ways being the NIL and relevancy, and the other way is, just through win totals in general. Because there's so much dust to be settled yet, but there's also real estate to be grabbed. And I feel like you want to be in a strong position right now. And I feel like in contrast to Wisconsin, I feel like Nebraska actually is in a strong position for a change. But Wisconsin right now, I feel like, man, I wonder how much they regret this whole identity change that they've done the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And when they moved away from Paul Chryst, I really thought they would hire Jim Leonard. I mean, this is an alumni, former great defender. He was dealing out great defenses year in and year out. I mean, top 10 units every year as their defensive coordinator. It just seemed like a no-brainer. He's like Mr. Wisconsin. He had turned down pro jobs. It seemed like he was committed for the long haul. And then they go and hire someone from outside the program. I guess I was still okay with it so far. They got Fickle, and that was one of the hottest candidates on the board that year. He brought Cincinnati to the playoff with a lot less talent on board. So that part I was fine with. What it was switching the offensive identity. They went out and hired Phil Longo, who actually, I mean, he's one of my favorite coaches I talked to. He's a great guy. He's had success almost everywhere he's been. But it's not the right fit to go up to Wisconsin. This is a run the ball, stop the run, really a Big Ten West, whatever moniker you want to give it. That was what they were good at. They were O-line U, running back U. So to switch it that much to more of a wide open finesse offense, and I know they run the ball in Longo's offense too, but it just seemed like they were going against their history. So anyway, I like the Fickle hire. I was shocked by the offensive style, and I think now they are switching back, or at least trying to claw back to what they were with this Jeff Grimes hire, a guy who loves to establish the run. And you might see a little bit more run percentage there this time around, but is the damage done? And now in a pivotal third year for Fickle, they draw the hardest schedule in the Big Ten.
Right.
So even if this coordinator hire is a win and they make some stat progressions, they could still go 5-7. And I don't know if he survives that. You already have Barry Alvarez, the godfather of Wisconsin football, already putting public quotes out there about it, and it's not looking good. So he's got to win a lot of tough games here, pull some upsets to survive.
Yeah, it just is a recipe for heartache in a lot of ways. The way I see it, and
they might be favored in 3 games this year. Looking at it,
yeah, they play at Alabama in non-conference, and their October is at Michigan. They play Iowa. They have Ohio State come to town, then they go to Oregon. So
the thing is, if you go to the offense or the style of offense that everybody does, it's the popular offense. Well, then now you're recruiting against everybody. Whereas opposed to where if you had that heavy, big lineman, north and south off, running or a running back, quarterback combination, you could recruit specifically to that. There wasn't so many people drawing from that. I just think it's hard. If you're going to do what everybody else does, you have to recruit at an elite level. And even looking at Brett's stats, we recruited better than Wisconsin has in these last few years. So I don't know what chance they have to do that while trying to do what everybody else does.
The comp to Solich is perfect. You're winning 9 games a year, which is roughly what they're doing with Chris, former quarterback at Wisconsin. And they didn't just make a change; they went whole heart they flipped everything, and we'll see where they go from
For
here.
the sake of the future, but I don't know
Brett's
if it's
point, this season is not this is not the schedule to try to get back onto the right side there. But let's get to where all the Redcasters are wanting to see here. Husker football. Last week they had the media days, or 2 weeks ago that was media days. Last week was the first week of the fall camp. We're 2 weeks in now. Let's start here with a little bit of Coach Rule and take it from there.
Our games early in the year, they come down to missed tackles. They come down to special teams. So we want to consistently work on our tackling. We want to consistently work on the situations that win games. Special teams is a big point of emphasis, obviously, for us, because when it's been good to us, we've won, and when it hasn't, we've lost.
So I think, Brett, that to me is a great place to start from. And you mentioned it in the game grader, is that Nebraska has rated as high as they have despite all the losses because of all these close losses. We're the greatest 3-9 team of all time. We go 4-8, but it's the best 4-8, all that. But what Coach Rule talked about there is we got to get good at defense. We got to get good at special teams. We brought in a special teams coordinator in Mike Eckler from Tennessee, former Husker coach there. And I went to coaches clinics for 20 years in a row. He's one of the top 3 coaches I think I saw during that time. Love the hire. Defensively, we're tackling. We're going to be physical. We're tackling in practice. We saw when Coach Frost got fired and Bill Bush became the defensive coordinator, the first thing he said was, well, we're going to start tackling in practice at least for the rest of the year. And shockingly, our defense got a little bit better.
I bet.
So that's development, right? So when you hear Coach Rule talk there, just about the basics there, Brett, how does Nebraska get from being that 5 and 6 win team to being the 7, the 8, the 9, and then who knows, even being that team that can fill in those middle gaps and get some depth in the Big Ten?
I mean, the special teams hire is huge, and he's had a great track record wherever he's been. He brings the energy, that's for sure. And you wonder how much of special teams really is mindset. I mean, you want these guys fired up to go do their job, laser focused. And it might be a small part of the game, but it's a small part until it's a big part. And at Nebraska, it's been a big part of the losses over these last couple of years. He's just, head scratcher type plays, missed chip shot field goals, botched snaps, botched extra point snaps. It's just, it seems like it's a lot of times it's Nebraska. So you want to get that fixed. That might flip a game or two itself right there. The tackling, I think that's been improved the last couple of years. I mean, Tony White did a lot to fix the black shirts. I know he's now gone, but hopefully a lot of that has been instilled in them. So I think that's big. Lastly, I would say the lines of scrimmage. Defensive line was a strength last year. You do lose 2 of those guys now to the pros. So you want to see how these former top 150 or former 4-star recruits become as new starters. That's my biggest swing position for Nebraska, is how quickly can that grow at defensive line and offensive line, because we keep hearing about the pipeline's return. Is this the year? They're finally veteran. And then there's been injuries and inconsistencies. So I think this is finally the year. You could probably look back. I probably said this a couple of years in a row, but it's got to be this year, guys. I mean, not only is the remaining roster veteran and everybody's back, but you went out and got 2 starters off Power 4 teams. So I like those additions with Pritchett from Alabama and Rocco Spindler from arguably the best line in the country, Notre Dame. And it might even be a good signal that Pritchett isn't even the starter right now, showing that there is a lot of depth there. I saw a practice report that he was not even getting first team reps. So we're still early yet, but that's a good sign of the depth there. So long story short, lines of scrimmage, I think are crucial to this. Tackling, he hit on. Special teams, he hit on. And then you want to see that second-year boost from Raiola. I mean, that's really the sky is the limit. If he can play up to a 5-star billing, then Nebraska has a shot in any game they're in.
Well, Brewmaster Bill has a question here, and it kind of falls along the lines of what you were just saying with some of the linemen. But where does Nebraska stand in terms of new players among the Big Ten?
Yeah, well, in terms of new players, if we're talking this cycle, it was above average in recruiting, checking in 22nd in the country. That's probably 6th in the conference if you break it down. But the transfers really stood out. They were 13th nationally from the transfer portal. That's towards the top of the conference. And if you look in my book here in my all-transfer team, Nebraska has some of the most in the Big Ten here with, let me count it real quick. I see 5 guys on the all-transfer team. Of course, the 2 I mentioned there, the 2 linemen with Spindler and Pritchett. You got Dane Key coming in from Kentucky, who was their number 1 receiver. I think you get another outside threat for Raiola. And then 2 more, Williams Nwaneri from Missouri, a former 5-star, and McCullough from Oklahoma. I think he also might have been a near 5-star, but has more starts under his belt at Oklahoma. So do-it-all linebacker. So, yeah, they did really well bolstering this roster, maybe patching up some of their weaker units like line and receiver, bringing in proven starters.
I think you can be forgiven though, Brett, if you have said this could be the year that Nebraska puts it all together, because we're the ultimate hoodwink team in the offseason. But I will say this, and I've talked to other people about this. When I talk about Coach Rule versus, some of our more recent coaches, he seems like the biggest maximizer of all the coaches. And when I say that, I don't mean just in player development and player recruitment, but just in all the things that Nebraska has available to us. The media market, the ability to get grass fields on the practice field, the ability to set up these camps independently and have them go. Like, he does a good job of letting Nebraska utilize its actual blue blood might and using that for a positive focus. So, when you look at the transfer portal this year and you look at honestly, the lack of transfers out of the program these past couple years, there's a lot of signs that would point to, this is the year that Nebraska finally puts it together. But I understand, really not just you, but like any Husker fan out there being a little gun shy to pull the trigger and say, yeah, this is the year. But when you look at it on paper, Brett, and when you examine this, and this is kind of what you do, it's like, how much of it is your prediction that, well, this particular program keeps biting me in the ass. I can't allow myself to do even what it says on paper I should normally do.
Yeah, it's definitely there. I mean, I think the stat was that they've underperformed their Vegas win total in 9 straight years. I think that I got to double check it. I saw that on Twitter, so take that for what it's worth. But the expectations are always, but then you watch them play and you're like, they are actually better than they show. So it's just special teams. We go back to that. That's cost so many games over the years. Even average or above average play, I think that flips a game or two, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when you look at it, not many programs have a 5-star quarterback. They just aren't that many in college football. Not that many are able to pull starting linemen off of Alabama and Notre Dame. That's really huge. And even if they don't end up starting, that just shows you how deep the 2 deep is. I think a little bit of transition on defense hurts the projection a little bit. Maybe I would have had them top 20. If you still have Tony White back and maybe some more of those guys didn't transfer. And so, that's just an uncertainty. But with that, you now have some new impact transfers coming in. So, I think you have a solid team here. And I think they're going to break the trend of the win-loss total. I think it's right now it's 7.5 or 6.5. But I don't want to spoil our last part of the show. I know we like to do the win, game-by-game win-loss thing. Sure. So we'll do that. But I think they're in for, another step forward in this Matt Rule era.
Kurt says, I'm curious what his odds are for Nebraska hosting a playoff game this season.
That'll be tough. I mean, to host a playoff game, you got to be, 11-1, maybe 10-2. So I think let's set the bar at making the bracket first and go from there. But that'll be tough.
Well, hey, Redcasters, we are with Brett Ciancia, Pick Six previews. If you have questions, get them in now before we're done here. Heisman voter, he's on the FWAA Super 16 poll, the FWA All-American Team Selection Committee. You have an opportunity to get a question into him. Do it now if you're going to do it. But
I'm always happy to hear when somebody like Brett has a vote, because then it makes the vote seem a lot more valid to me. I'm like, there's a guy I actually know has done the research on this guy.
Well, and Brett said, you got to go 11-1 like in Indiana did last year. And to Brett's point, we don't get the tens of thousands of votes that his blue blood poll did, but we got 10,000 votes. And it was our annual, we just got done with it on Twitter, game by game prediction. And we always say, if you ask Husker fans, that there's realists and there's optimists and all that. But if you ask someone, what do you think will go? And somebody will say, oh, we'll go 6-6, or we'll go 9-3, or they'll say some number, right? But then whenever we do this game by game poll, inevitably it always turns out 10-2 or 11-1, because even that 6-6 person's like, okay, we'll go 6-6, but it's not going to be a loss to that team. It's not going to be a loss to that team by the time you get done. Well,
who the hell's Indiana?
Well, we ended up 11-1 in our poll. The only loss was to Penn State, and it was like an 89 to 21% or 81 to 19% loss. The closest win we had was the USC. We won like 53 to 47%. And then the other ones like Michigan and at Minnesota were 63 to 37. And Husker fans will appreciate this. Iowa, our hated rival across the pond there, or across the river, I think it was like 90 to 10%. And I can already picture like Jeffrey the Greek, our mutual friend, Brett, Jeffrey the Greek, Iowa alum, probably sitting there going like, "Oh my goodness, we've beaten these guys 9 out of 10 years or whatever the number is, and they've got 90% of people thinking that." But I mean, Brett. It is that time of year, and that's the beauty of it.
I love that so much.
90-10. That imputes like a 35-0 win or something. That's crazy.
It's wonderful. But okay, I want to show a couple of videos here real quick for you, Brett. We'll talk a little offense, talk a little defense, and we'll get you out of here. Offensively, here's Coach Holgerson, one of our new coordinators.
What I saw when I first got here was a lot of cluttered minds. They just weren't playing free. They weren't playing fast because it was a big playbook. They had everything in, and it's just hard in a college game to be able to do that. I took the entire spring semester and with basically the same staff, and we added players and we fine-tuned what we wanted to do. And what I'm looking at right now is a lot different. It's a lot different schematically. It's a lot different with players, and it's flowing a lot better as well.
4-12. So right there, Brett, we've got the 5-star quarterback. What can Holgerson do with them? You heard what he tried to do even just in a limited time last year in 4 games. Now he's had an offseason. What can he do with this offense?
I think a lot. Will be more improved. He knows the roster better. When you're only in charge for 3 games, you're still just experimenting with different guys at different places, some different pieces in the offense. But now with a full year and a whole offseason and probably handpicking some of these recruits that were brought in and transfers coming in, and it's going to be more of his offense. And say what you want about him as a head coach. He's had a lot of success, a lot of issues at some lower tier teams like Houston, but he's a great offensive mind. I mean, he's one of the best in the game. He continues to modernize with the game. He finds advantages with rosters he's dealt. So, and you saw it uptick last year when he took over. The Wisconsin game was probably the best offensive game of the year for Nebraska, dropping 44 points, a ton of yards. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be great. And now you get a second-year quarterback bonus with Raiola, a more veteran line. I like the receivers being brought in. I think it's going to be one of the most improved offenses in the country.
One of the areas, Brett, I think that we talk about like in recruiting, we give star systems to players, but the coaching staffs, like where's your talent in your staff? And when I look at what Rule has done in the last 2 years, if I've seen a trend here, but we could be we could critique it. We could go back 2 years ago and say he tried to do some things with that initial staff that he did in the past, and it didn't work. He tried to bring in a high school coach from Texas, like he did Joey McGuire down at Baylor. He tried to do that here. It didn't work. He brought in a young receivers coach, and a couple years later, we can say it didn't work. But what he's done as he's evolved in this role, look at this offensive staff right now. Now you have Holgerson coaching the OC. You've got Glenn Thomas, who's been a former OC, coaching quarterbacks. You have Marcus Satterfield, who was the OC here, still coaching as a tight end. The brain trust that's in that room right now, in addition to what he's done with Eckler at special teams, in addition on the defense, we'll get there in just a second, but the defense, there's a lot of brain power in there. I just see a coaching staff that's revamped, and I see a very comfortable Holgerson right now in this role, like this is what I want. I don't want to be the CEO guy. I want to coach. I want to get into the X's and O's. I get to do that. And I really like the staff that I'm working with. If he didn't, he would have got rid of some more guys, and he didn't.
No, that's true.
I'm just very content with where we're at right now from a leadership standpoint there.
Yeah. And you take a look at other examples across college football. That's the new trend is, maybe some offensive guru types that don't want to do all the NIL and the fundraising and all the cheerleading. They just want to do X's and O's. And you look at Chip Kelly. He was the example last cycle where he demoted himself from UCLA's head coaching job to be a coordinator at Ohio State and get to just call plays and do X's and O's. That was a home run. And you see Gus Malzahn doing the same, stepping down from UCF to go to Florida State. And Dana, I know he might not have himself stepped down, of course, fired from Houston, but still a long-time head coach at the Power 4 level. Could clearly get a head coaching job somewhere, but maybe wants to just remain in this X's and O's spot. And yeah, in that interview, that little clip you just showed, he seems so much more relaxed than you're used to seeing him on Saturdays in the fall, where he's yelling at refs and throwing his hat on the ground. And so maybe this is the right role for him. And if you're a Husker fan, you hope he follows the path of those other two guys.
Yeah. And it could be such a sweet spot for coaches like him or Chip Kelly, where, hey, nowadays you don't really have to get on the road and recruit so much, because let's face it, it's a numbers game. it's going to be what you can pay him anyway. So the recruiting thing isn't going to be that big of a deal anymore. But what would be a bigger deal for you as a coach is what kind of offense you're producing, what kind of on the field production you're showing these guys to recruit to. But like in the past, every coach had to recruit. You couldn't just be an offensive coordinator and just call plays. Like you need to get your ass on the road because there's only a certain amount of coaches that can do it. Nowadays, that's completely shifted.
Yeah,
and if you've got the resources to do it, I think you'll probably see. Well, certainly, with Ohio State's success last year, and we kind of piggybacked off of that with Holgorsen. We'll just kind of, I wouldn't be surprised to see a trend of that, where former high-level head coaches start becoming offensive coordinators that don't want to.
Well, and we finally, for one of the first times, we benefit from some dead money being paid out from a former team firing a coach too. Doesn't hurt. There's so much money even in the coordinator game now. But I agree with you, Brett. There, I think that you're seeing some trend changes here, and that guys can get really comfortable in their spot. Hopefully, John Butler here, I'm going to show defense coordinator. Hopefully, he's comfortable in this spot as well.
You've got to be able to stop the run. It's very simple. You got to be able to stop the run in today's market, in today's football. That's the run in the RPO game, and you got to be able to affect the quarterback. And that requires you to be aggressive, not only in how you're calling the game, but aggressive in how you're teaching the fundamentals to your team. I think a lot of times people get it misconstrued that, oh, are you aggressive? Well, aggressive isn't about zero blitz in every snap. That sometimes can be stupid. But you have to be aggressive in how you get your players to play, to attack the line of scrimmage up front, to be physical at the second level, for our DBs to challenge and contest the ball. That's aggressive. And I think that everything about us is going to be, we're going to be an attack-oriented defense that's going to do our best to attack what the offense is doing and make it hard for them to move the football.
Brett, that audio there is from before the bowl game a year ago. But it's that appropriate is that sounds like that was coming from Coach Rule. Mm-hmm. And so they're on the same page there. We hear a lot about being aggressive. I've always said you have to earn the right to be aggressive. We've got to stop the run on first and second down to get aggressive on third down. It's hard to get aggressive when you're in third and ones. We talked about the staff. That's John Butler now. He's been a past defensive coordinator in the Big Ten and at Penn State. We've got Phil Snow that's now on the defensive staff. Defensive backs coach Williams was the defensive coordinator a year ago at UCF. I mean, there is some legitimate, again, brain power in that room, some coordinator power. What can the Huskers replace Tony White? You've mentioned him already and what he did. And I'm not. He did an unbelievable job here. But what can this staff do? What can this defense do in year 3? New staff, some of those players that we talked about that we brought in.
Yeah, well, I think you want to continue what Tony White started because if you think back to the years before Tony White, they were missing a lot of tackles, giving up a lot of points, a lot of explosives. But when he came in, he really changed the culture, it seemed like, on that side of the ball. And it's probably the best I'd seen Nebraska play defense since the Sue and Prince Amukamara years. I mean, that 2023 defense was just – and it wasn't maybe all just stats, which were also there. It was the mentality, just the energy. I mean, they're flying around making plays. Just the intensity was different. So I want to see that continued. I don't know how that ends up statistically, but I want that mindset to remain because that's a big part of Nebraska football. So I like bringing in Phil Snow. This is a longtime associate of Matt Rule. I think he was there at all of his big program rebuilds at Temple and Baylor. It's kind of his mentor. So, you're going to get, somebody that's on his page and will help with the big rebuild. Personnel wise, I like it. It's a little bit of a question mark for me just because it's new faces, new starters. Of course, losing Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher, that's a huge 1-2 punch. I mean, we might even take for granted how big they were as run stoppers, as gap fillers. They were just, they were really important to how this defense operated. So those are 2 big losses. Now you do have some good recruits coming up the pipeline, and you hope that they live up to their 4-star billing. And reports are good out of spring. But still a question when you lose 2 great guys like that. But the secondary's veteran. Linebackers are former top 100 recruits and big transfers. So I like the star power at linebacker. So, it really comes down to me. The biggest storyline on defense is how they replace those 2 defensive tackles. And if those young recruits can live up to their billing.
It really become a mark of a staff going forward with how well they acclimate their transfer classes. If you can get those, if you have a system that's very plug and play, or you can onboard people quickly, I think that's going to serve you big in college football going forward, especially if you're an upper echelon.
But even, we talked earlier about the offensive line and a guy like Pritchard not, coming from Alabama, and he's not the starter right now. He's in a battle. Right now, we talk about the guys that have come in through the portal and some of the new guys on the D line, but you still have Elijah Judy back. You have Riley Van Poppel now going into year 3, and they redshirted him a year ago. You have Cameron Leonard back for his 3rd year. And, it goes right back to what you said at the very beginning of this, Brett, is that what Coach Rule, a hallmark of his programs, is his development. Yeah. Well, if they're developing those guys, then we've got – 3 guys right there with plenty of experience that have been through the, 3 years of this program on top of those transfers, on top of Williams Nwari coming in here. Sure. And my goodness, what Keanu Davis looks like. I mean, we've got guys that look different from what some Nebraska defensive linemen have looked like the last few years. I mean, these are big, long dudes. And so the numbers are there. I'm not concerned about the depth. It really just becomes, it's execution and at the end of the day, you are replacing what Ty and what Nash did, and you knew what those guys were going to give. I don't know play in and play out yet what these guys are going to give.
If we're going to be a top program, I mean, and I do think Ty was undervalued in the draft. Yeah, so was Nash. He probably could have got drafted high, but the bottom line, we're replacing a 3rd round draft pick on the defensive line and a free agent, right?
I can't remember.
But that's what I'm saying.
I see what you're getting. It wasn't. They
weren't
first rounders.
Like the Bamas, the Georgias, the 10. They're replacing first rounders. We're replacing 3rd rounders, free agent picks. Like we need to get to a point where we're doing that year in and year out. And in fact, replacing higher levels. Yeah. So for me, in his 3rd year, to say that we're expecting a drop off in the defense, that's a loss. To me, that's an L. We shouldn't be doing that. At this point, you should have addressed that at this point. So I won't be very forgiving of that if I do see the defensive line struggling.
Well, and this coaching staff too, Brett. I think they've done a good job with roster management. So as an example, we lose Mekhi Bear, a linebacker we all would have loved to have had back. And he goes to Missouri. For some reason, didn't work out there, and he's not in Missouri anymore. But they replaced him with Marquise Watson Trent. I mean, who was the player of the year in the Sun Belt down there. I mean, so this staff
he'll probably lead us in tackles this year.
Dasan McCullough that comes in from Oklahoma. I mean, there's some talented guys that have come in through the transfer. I'm curious to see how they all come together, Brett. That's the biggest thing is just it's a group of some new guys there, merging with guys that have been on the program for 2, 3, 4 years. I'm just curious to see how it comes together.
No, for sure. I mean, coordinator changes are always a question mark here in the preview magazine game, but that was from within. You're bringing in Phil Snow, who's a rule guy through and through, so that smooths that issue over a little bit. And yeah, to your point, he's a developer, so I think if it's going to work, it's going to be shown there where your next man up mentality, and because you lose a lot in that front 6 or front 7, whatever you want to call it at Nebraska. I mean, I think it's all 7 starters up front are gone. So normally that'd be enough for me to throw a team out off the top 40 board. So I guess I'm giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there that they'll remain a solid defense even without White and all 7 starters.
That's a good point.
Special teams, and we'll get out of here. We talked about Mike Eckler already. He has come in and he has a philosophy. I mean, seriously, we brought in a starting punter from Washington in December and let him go a few months later, not because of any of his fault. In fact, Coach Rule, when he let the punter go, Coach Rule was like, this is a good kid. This is not his problem. Yeah. But what we did is we brought in a special teams coordinator who has a different philosophy. He wants to have the Aussie kicking. And so they went out there and they brought in a kicker from Australia. And they brought in another kicker to go along with John. So we have Kyle Kunanen along with John Hall with Tristan Ovano back. So there's competition at kicker. I mean, I think at the core of it, it's not going to be for a lack of guys and a lack of competition. They desperately want to get better at special teams there, Brett. And I think we've kind of talked about this, but I'll give you the final say on it. I mean, special teams wise, if we are special teams neutral or special teams better than teams, how quickly can this get really turned around?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can flip that to an asset from a liability, that really flips the whole formula. I mean, how many of these games go down to 1 score? You guys all lived through it. And I bet if you look at those, most of those were 1 score because of some big special teams mishap. So, I'm not saying you need an Alex Henry or one of the Brown brothers to all of a sudden be back at kicker, but you got to have a guy that's automatic within 40 yards because you get down that close, you can't go away empty-handed, whether it's 7s or 3s, hopefully 7s, but you got to be able to rely on a kicker from medium range. So that flips games. Special teams with field position, that flips games. I mean, look at Iowa's formula. If you can't beat them, join them. And That's been great for them, and I think you're going to need that here. So, yeah, I think it's a great hire, though. He's been great everywhere he's been. I think it was Tennessee, right? He had a great track record there.
Top
And
five
then
special
formerly
teams.
a Husker staffer before that, so he knows the lay of the land. So, yeah, good hire there, but I'll believe it when I see it with Nebraska. It's got to change.
Well, that's the truth there. I mean, I go back to Oklahoma in 21. I remember playing them on the road there. We played them within a score, and we missed a 30-yard field goal from dead center. We get an extra point blocked and returned. Go back to the Iowa game last year, and we drop a punt at the 3-yard line against a team that couldn't move the ball against us. All those things. Think of the one win that we have against Iowa in the last 10 years, and they dropped a punt. So, I mean, special teams, I'm speaking Boomer's language here, but, I mean, you absolutely – that is such an important piece of the game there, and we've been so woefully bad at that. And I think that this is my prediction, Honke's prediction here. I mean, with Eckler, I think you're going to see immediate. I'll be shocked if we are not – there's a sizable difference in special teams next year or this year from past. Boomer, do we have any final questions here? One or two with Brett before we let him go. Brett, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. I know you've done this is your third show of the day, right? So I mean, just so appreciate your time.
Thanks a ton. No, of course.
Boomer, what is the biggest question mark for Nebraska going into the 2025 season?
Yeah, well, we hit on a lot of it. I think it's got to be that defensive line for me. Just losing those two big guys, Ty Robinson and Hutmacher. And then I know that they are talented recruits coming up the pipeline, but I want to see it because I think if you can just fix one spot right away, if you say the defensive line remains elite, then I think you have a really strong defense again. Because I think the linebackers will fill in just fine. The secondary is veteran. It's really if you can get that, if you can backfill a defensive tackle, I like that. Another question is just how big a gap, how big a gain can Raiola make in a second year? You see this all the time from a second-year starting quarterback, especially a freshman to a sophomore, true freshman to a true sophomore. So, and within the same coordinator scheme too. How big is that gap going to be? We know he's going to get better. How much better? That's the question for me.
Yeah. On the offensive side, wide receivers and tight ends, I think that people are really excited around here with the talent there and the depth in those areas. Well, running back is really the interesting one for me. I think Emmett Johnson has the potential to be as good of a starting running back as we've had since that era of, Amir and Burkhead and Roy Halou. I think which really is the last 10 years. I think he can be as good as any of them. But the questions really are what's behind.
Yeah, what's the stable?
Where's number 2? Where's number 3? I think there's some talent, but where do they come from? We'll find out. But Brett, I mean, this has been simply awesome. We're going to head to parting shots here. Thank you so much. Hell, you're an hour later than us, and I know what a long day you've had. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate and look forward to this every single year. Mac, I'm going to give you the first parting shot, and then we're going to let Brett, our guest, lead us out of here. But Mac, what do you got?
Well, it's just it's such a fun time of the year. Brett was right when he came on. He said, everybody's undefeated, and we are undefeated right now. It's nothing but potential right now. But there's a lot of national media hype around the Huskers, more than I care for currently. And honestly, there is. I mean,
we used to beg.
I know
Brett for the hype, and now you don't want it.
And I'm not even talking about Brett. I'm just hearing.
No, it's not Brett. No.
And I'm hearing from other people that get like a lot of hype around the Huskers, and I think that's great. I think it seems like it's well intentioned. Like people want the Huskers to be good again. Yeah. Hell, we all do. So. It's just kind of exciting, kind of getting towards that, the end of summer, near fall. There's been some fall type weather days here lately with the rain. Yeah. It's just kind of in your bones. But God damn, has anyone else noticed how the corn and the cob sales has been through like abysmal this year? I don't feel like I see enough stands on the side of the road whatsoever. So to all you out there who are growing sweet corn, let's get her out on the streets a little bit here. I'm willing to buy by the dozen.
Brett, this is a very Nebraska problem. I think that Mac is mentioning. I'm not sure if you're running into this on the East Coast the same way, but
we got Jersey produce out here in the Garden State, but not so much the corn sales.
Well, Brett, like I said, thank you so much for being on. Take us out of here. What's your parting shot?
Parting shot would just be, I really enjoyed my time at Nebraska last fall. Got to meet so many of I'm sure the Redcast listeners, but just Husker Nation in general. You guys got to see you guys again and Husk guys and a great tailgate. So really, I'm glad I got to see Nebraska at its peak for that night and hope to get back soon. I think you've got a lot of W's on the schedule this year. I think it's another building block season for Matt Rule. If you're looking at it, I think 8-4 is a good bar to hit. That packs in, some significant wins. I see a 3-0 start and really a huge game against Michigan at home and a huge game against USC at home. That could really be the swing games of either a really special year or still a solid year. So those 2 home games are going to make or break the season for Nebraska. But appreciate you guys having me on and all the praise for the book and the magazine and everything. And, congrats to what you guys have built and good luck for 2025 with the podcast and really all your podcasts. I see the company's expanding, which is great. And hope to get out there and see you guys this fall. If not this fall, then next. But thank you for having me on as always, and good luck, Huskers.
All right. Thanks a bunch, bud.
Yeah, it's pick6previews.com. Redcasters, head over there right now. Pick up a copy. Pick up a printed copy as well while you're at it. It is well worth every penny. And Brett Ciancia, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again. And until next time, that's another Go Big Redcast.
A Herd at Sports Network production.